So the world is watching more than they ever have before, wherever we are in the world. And the global community cares so much more than any other time in the history and watches very closely what's happening everywhere. We're in a time now where we're looking back at a past that has been dirty, we've made people sick, and it just hasn't been that great. We're in a really important transformative time right now where we're looking forward to a bright, clean, and healthy, well future. And we have the opportunities to do these things by changing the way we're thinking and changing the questions we're asking and focusing on the right topics. We've identified these top drivers of change, these mega forces that will be the ones that really change what happens over the next many decades. Energy infrastructure, mobile technology, water access, renewable energy. And it's really mobile technology that will drive a lot of changes in these other topics. And we've looked at that and seen how it will apply to our case study project. So as we have been asking some questions that haven't really been producing different results, our team decided we needed to change the questions and turn them upside down and look at everything from a different perspective. So how will we change the question and look at a different result? We decided we would, instead of what does it take to get to zero, we would start with the question of what would it be like if we simply started at zero and then go towards the positive side? What could we do to grow a positive and clean and well future that is zero plus or net positive in three key categories? The human experience, it's really all about the people. Best value, building the right things for the right size with the right amount of money and having some payback. And then setting performance targets before we design so that we're getting ourselves in the right place. Energy, water, carbon, waste, and materials. And all these things working together. So our team started with that, well, let's be at zero first. You don't get any energy, you don't get any water, you don't get anything until you prove that you need it for an essential function or a value-added proposition. So as we did that, we looked at just a couple of examples here on this target setting page, starting from where we want to be on the far right. We want to restore health, where there's no fossil fuels being used, clean the air, not just pollute it less, renewing water, waste, there is no waste. It's a resource, and there's a circular economy producing a positive financial impact. And then working backwards to where we were in our case example, making things better, but always starting from that 0 point and working towards our ultimate objective. And then looking at the scales of from all the way from the individual through building, site, and then ultimately in the community. And we engaged in this by asking ourselves these very thought-provoking and compelling questions in an interactive process, working with tools as well as the people and the teams. And we had a process of using those targets being informed by a tool that we call a set log. It's basically evaluation criteria, some cloud-based analysis tools, and then parametric modeling. So the joining of that, all that mobile technology with the experience and the interaction of people. The set logs helped us to quantify 150 or so different strategies that could support the targets that we had in mind. And it made a really fast and quick way to check our targets against strategies that we thought would contribute to them, and then take out the ones that did not have value and then work with deeper analysis like the CFIRA cloud-based analysis program that helped us to very quickly see that our building was not very well daylit. We could then rapidly iterate around energy performance as well as other things. And then applied that into a parametric modeling tool that could study more combinations than anyone could think of manually. We took 6 top variables that resulted from that process and fed them into this parametric system that analyzed 640,000 combinations of those 6 different variables. And out came the optimized building. So putting the power of people together with the power of technology has been able to yield a better result for us. So our project was Los Angeles Trade Tech College, a science building, It's built in the 1970s. In this particular project with all of our 7 firms, this is the only college campus, and it's a very high energy using science laboratory building. It's been through one series of upgrades in the 2000s. They did all of the easy stuff was done by the time we got here, and so we did a deep walkthrough called an ASHRAE Level 2 energy analysis, and had to work extra hard to find the things that would produce beneficial outcomes in this building, because all the low-hanging fruit had been already done in the early 2000 upgrades. And we looked at it for what the human experience could be, comparing it to some more recent buildings that are more interactive and alive, and really emphasizing that education experience. So this is the interior, some examples from the inside of this science building. And we found through analysis and walkthrough and just the feeling of the place that it's one that's not very active, it's dark, and it's kind of dead in a sense. You can't see out of it, and there's some improvement. So putting each one of these pictures to what it could be a place of active learning, bright and interactive, one that really promotes good learning and good experience. Going further with that, there's in education pedagogy, we have things like the living room, the learning everywhere, and we've had results on other projects that show when you do these things, you get really high results on user satisfaction and the perception of wellness and performance improvement. And so we there's some easy moves that could be made in each of these examples, in each of this building, that could be applied elsewhere. And so as we look at the existing building, we rated it according to our 7 targets, estimated what we think those would be, and found it on the negative end of the scale on each one, and then started from 0 and said, how can we turn these to positive? So as we look at what that future could look like, we did find in every case that we can at least keep ourselves at 0 and turn the meters to the positive side. And we're going to summarize those results. And the picture looks different, but it still looks beautiful, and it's still a wonderful place. As we transition into the energy part of the story, there are many of those optimizations from the early process we talked about, some renewable energy, a number of envelope improvements, and a number of improvements on the inside, especially with the lighting. And then there's a really big topic of user engagement and monitoring of what's happening, and that's where the mobile technology really comes in to drive change. Once users know what's happening, it will help them change what they're doing and do better. So that every building really needs a way for the users to understand and know what's happening with energy and water. In our analysis, we found that the easy layer that we can do to get the building more efficient using that CFIRA analysis software, which is cloud-based, we can get to 40 to 60% improvement on the existing building. But that's not far enough, because remember, we were starting at 0. So we reversed ourselves back and said, well, okay, what's available for us to use on site for solar panels and electricity generation? If we took all of the available area on top, on the right, that shows what that would look like, lots of energy generation. The current building would use a very large portion of that for just this one building. But when we apply our optimization, we shrink the need for the size of the solar panels down significantly and then leave more of that capacity to produce electricity and energy for other parts of the campus. Tying that together, then we look at the related emissions. The existing building has a emissions relationship to the energy of 2 million pounds of carbon dioxide that's equal to about the annual emissions of 191 passenger cars for an entire year of emissions of those cars, making looking at the more efficient building, still a reduction, but still using a lot more, producing a lot more carbon. And then as we go to the 0, the positive side, when we get to net 0 and then positive energy, we also have a positive carbon story. So now we're not only just making the air less dirty, but we're actually turning that to slightly to positive and then beginning the process of cleaning the air. One move that needs to be made in a larger context. And all those emissions has a healthcare impact and a wellness impact. It's been estimated that we are spending somewhere near $900 billion annually on healthcare costs related to emissions. And on this map, the darker blues and purples are the places where there's more emissions. And so, yeah, we're one of those. And we're making ourselves not feel very good, and we're costing ourselves a lot of money in all ways. So turning our attention then to the positive water story, we did again ask the question, well, what does it look like when we start from zero? But here we're going to start from where we are. We have 700,000 gallons of rainwater that falls on the site around this. And we looked at what is the current state, and the very high water use. They got a irrigated lawn, and they're using water for cooling. And so if we change some of those things, we begin to make a really big impact on how much water is being used. And there's some easy moves here. The landscape still looks beautiful, but it's different. We're changing how we're using water for cooling, and we have low flow fixtures. Those are the easy things. As we stretch ourselves, we begin to ask, really, when we're at zero, who needs the water and what for? And really, who owns the water, and who gets to decide what we're using it for? In a zero water environment, we ended up with this picture where we actually could use, with moves that we can do today without a whole lot of investment, we can use less water than the rainwater that falls on this site. And so we still end up with beautiful landscaping, but it is not irrigated turf grass. We don't use water for cooling systems, and we basically end up starting from we need water to drink, and we need water to do a few other things, and then everything else is optional based on the situation we're in. Putting that all together, we can save 2 million gallons of water that can be used for something else. And right now, this is a really good time to have extra water to use for something else. If you convert that, what does that mean? That's the annual drinking water needs for about 7,300 people for just the water saved in this one building. Then if you multiply it by Chet's examples earlier, how many buildings there are, you get to enough water just by doing the education buildings and getting down to the lowest water use that you can and still doing what you need to. You supply all of the drinking water needs for the entire state with some left over. As a frame of reference, California Golf Course uses about 1 million to 1.5 million gallons a day to stay green, and we're talking about saving 2 million a year. So we clearly have some opportunities. So we asked ourselves the question, really, as we were analyzing this, what are we going to use the water for? Besides that, we need to drink, and we also need to grow some food. And we began to look at the embodied water in various things, such as what we want to eat. So in the end, do we want to have green grass and green golf courses, or do we want to drink water and grow food with it? Food takes in a large amount of water. And that day we had almonds on our working table, and one almond takes a gallon of water to make that almond. So I had 10 almonds during a break, and I had 10 gallons of water with that nice snack that I was having. Then turning our attention to the waste story, we have, again, another opportunity. There's already in the stream compostable, recyclable things that are going to landfill. If we just simply diverted those, we'd have less cost from what it takes to bring them to landfill, and we would be taking a very large volume out of that stream, and about equal to annually filling up the Staples Center with the kinds of stuff that could just be diverted. That's cost, that's all kinds of impacts that could be avoided. And we tie that all together with materials, both the emissions from the energy and then the emissions from the materials inside of the building. We had a healthcare client recently tell us that we had a patient come in and was diagnosed with an emissions-related illness that the doctor figured out was caused by the very hospital that that patient was in for diagnosis and treatment, because they were the largest emitter in the community. And so we have to connect the dots with what we're doing, like that doctor did, and make things better so that we're making the people better. Putting the financial measurements on this, roughly this campus for that building was spending about $200,000 a year for energy. With our reductions applied and zero net energy, they could get to where they're recapturing that $200,000. And then applying the future metrics to it, ultimately we can get to a payback, and then you're starting to run positive on your energy story, on your financial story, and gain back money to pay for other things. And so we conclude with a really compelling question. When the college freshmen of today were in kindergarten, what was that world like? When today's kindergartners are college freshmen, what will that world be like? And will we have done anything significantly different enough between now and then that what we're giving the next generation is significantly better, and we have the opportunity to do so, and we're so pleased to have some of that in-between generation here, the 4th through 6th graders, that are going to help us get there. And so we ask ourselves new questions, and we can get different results.